Good morning and welcome to, what is it, a chilly, rainy March morning in Gauteng. But it's going to be fun. We've got an interesting guest who I will introduce you in just a moment or two. We've got lots to talk about this morning as well. And for those of you who thought I might be dead from the cold that I had on Monday, I'm still here. So it's going to take a lot more than that to kill me. Don't send buses and 10-ton trucks on the highway now to prove your point. But yeah. I made it. I spent the whole day yesterday sniffing and coughing and running around trying to avoid other human beings, but feeling much better today. So thanks for asking. The point is that this morning I was excited to come in, and I had to survive because we've actually got someone who is the former mayor of the city I live in. He's also still in the metro trying to fight the good fight. He is, of course, the former Tshwane mayor who is Cilliers Brink. He's here with us this morning. How are you?
Gareth, I'm great, and it's great to be here.
I already told you we're not going to spend the whole morning talking about politics, but if we don't at least talk about some of it, people will feel very cheated.
Absolutely.
So we've got to get into it somehow, and thanks for waking up extra early and coming through on the rainy highway.
Yeah.
So how are you? You're not the mayor anymore, so life must be better already.
Well, more time with kids and dogs and at home, and my wife giving me all sorts of chores to do.
Yeah, but you're not on leave. I mean, you're still there, right?
I'm still there, but it takes less time to be leader of the opposition than it does being the mayor.
How much less time? Are we talking like 60% less?
About 60% less.
Oh, wow.
And it's a very important job being leader of the opposition. But I've gone back to a bit of a legal practice on the side.
Okay. Are you allowed side gigs?
Yes, you are. I mean, if you're in government, obviously you can't do that. You have to declare it.
Let me just tell you, I'm all in favor of side gigs, provided they are legitimate side gigs. And
Absolutely.
You declare them.
Yeah.
But I would prefer if people weren't career politicians, especially if they're not in mayor roles. You know, if you're the leader of opposition and you can actually run a bit of a legal practice on the side, I think that's great.
It's a very important test. I won't swear on your program. But,
no, you can though.
Okay, well, it's like having a bit of fuck off money.
Yep.
Having a bit of freedom to say,
sure.
If my principles are trampled on, or if I just don't see a way forward in politics, I go back to a career. And if you listen to Tony Leon, he always talks about hinterland, having run a business. I mean, I've had a paint shop, I've had a paint contracting business. So you have a view of the world, the ordinary, everyday experiences of people. And that enriches your politics, and it gives you that bit of
and credibility. Because I would rather trust someone who's actually run their own business, someone who's had to earn money outside of the public purse. To me, there's nothing more stinky and off-putting than a politician who has to take money from other people in order to survive.
And you increasingly see it because you get people who go into politics younger and younger. So it becomes a profession, it becomes a career, and you get good politicians who've only been in politics. But you're right, it takes away a bit of credibility and a bit of experience of what the real world looks like.
I wouldn't mind having a mayor who could put a new coat of paint on something. I mean, Pretoria, really, let's just, the last time I had you on, you were mayor of Pretoria, and we spoke about it, and I was so down about that city, and I think it's probably much worse now. Who knows? You can fill me in. I'm just surmising because I certainly haven't seen incredible improvement all around me. But when you live in a city, it's so disheartening to see things falling apart. And I see the roads are looking like shit. I see that buildings are crumbling. I see that bridges look like they're about to collapse. I see the verges full of litter and just weeds. And it feels like, that in Lord of the Rings, in the third movie, there's that town on the other side of the river from the orcs. And the orcs have made there's just rubble everywhere. And you can see that city is like this close to falling apart completely. And then it does start to fall apart when they invade and all the rest of it. And it's just
well, there's a comparison I'll remember for my next.
I mean, like that, whatever that place is called is kind of what. This is the place where the president's office is. This is the place where the president's residence is. This is the executive capital of South Africa. We should have the pride and the dignity and the self-respect to be able to look after our capital city. And really, I mean, just driving, I try to avoid it now. If I don't have to go into Pretoria, I won't. But, my sister's an advocate at the High Court there, and she says to me, the whole place stinks of urine. Just like the whole street, the parking outside, the building outside. And you've got people there dressing up in their legal outfits. I'm sure you have a couple of times too. And they're off to go and plead some case for some either big or small thing. And, you're like dressed up, but you're walking through puddles of human urine. And it's like, this is not a dignified way to go about things. And I understand urban populations have their challenges, but am I wrong to feel down about this stuff?
You are absolutely not wrong to feel down about it. And once we lower our standards and say this is just how life is in South Africa, then we know we're on the wrong track. But it's also important to understand how we got there.
Yeah.
And that the solution to that, and having clean streets and a nice, and who got us there?
I'm looking for someone to blame as well, right?
Yeah, well, it's fairly obvious,
yeah.
but I'll mention it as well. But the point is, you can have clean streets and safe spaces and those things, but it comes at the end of making difficult decisions. So the most dirty that the city probably was in its entire existence was when I was mayor, and there was a 3-month-long strike where municipal officials wanted a pay increase which taxpayers couldn't afford to pay, and which I simply refused to pay. And they trashed the streets and burnt waste removal trucks. And we simply stood our ground and said, no, we're not going to pay. We are going to go through this. And so we experienced a momentary disruption and trashing of streets and so forth, but that saved the city 600 million rand. And it saved successive pay increases above inflation for a couple of years. So similarly, cleaning up an inner city, it takes some tough decisions. Enforcing the law, making sure that everybody pay their dues and so forth. But, and I'm not going to go on about corruption and mismanagement and tenderpreneurship. Those are factors. But the other thing about cities in this country is that for the past 12 years, the population has grown much faster than the economy. And that puts everything under pressure.
Yeah.
People come to the cities in hope of a better life. That's urbanization. That's normal. I grew up in Limpopo, so I'm probably an economic migrant to Pretoria. But if they arrive and there's no job opportunities and prospects to start a business, they become backyard dwellers, or they end up in hijacked buildings or land grabs. And those are unserviced stands, and that produces waste, which ends up on street corners. And so the urban decay. So yes, we can clean up cities with tough decisions and action, but we also need the economy to grow. If that doesn't happen, we're not going to get out of this urban crunch of population growth exceeding economic growth.
So, I mean, is your life better now that you don't have to be thinking about solving these problems on a daily basis, and you're dealing with, just personally, I mean, you're getting more time with your wife and kids? Because I've often questioned this. I've questioned people I love, people I hate, people I kind of am ambivalent about. Why would you go into politics? Because if you can do 60% of the worrying instead of 100% of the worrying, you can spend time with your kids, you can practice a bit of law on the side, make some money, have a good life, which is what most South Africans want. Why would you put that on the altar of going back into that horrible office, having to deal with like rubbish workers? And
yes,
I don't understand it. You got to explain this to me.
Yeah, so I can tell you this. I would far rather be the mayor of the city, even a chaotic city on the edge of bankruptcy, than the leader of the opposition. Being in opposition is crap, because you get to talk a lot, but you don't actually get to do something.
No.
And especially in our situation, where we made some significant reforms, we fought some significant battles, and now to see, in the one instance, people who used to serve in your coalition taking credit for what you did right and then blaming you for everything that went wrong. I mean, that is incredibly frustrating. But that,
by the way, who's the biggest party in Tshwane?
It's the ANC, by a cat's whisker.
Okay.
So
tiny little majority that they've got, and then they've obviously allied with Action SA.
With Action SA.
And Action SA got to have the mayor.
Yes, they tilted the balance, and they basically gave the ANC and the EFF control, because they're smaller than both of those parties, in exchange for the mayoral position, which I think is designed to sort of give the party a new reason for existence. I think if they've got the mayor Maybe
Yeah,
they
'cause
can get some airtime that they didn't get when I was the mayor.
Okay, that's fine, I suppose, for them, because where else are they going to get any attention? They don't really have any footprint anywhere else.
Bad for the residents of the city. You know, you have to live the consequences.
Sure. I mean, I remember when all of this was going on, I said, why don't people, why isn't there a mechanism where we can withhold our municipal rates and taxes? Because I certainly don't get it. I get nothing out of that.
Yeah.
And then Herman Mashaba climbed into me and he's like, he basically called on the city to look into my municipal accounts, which, by the way, are totally up to date, you asshole. And I'm just, like a politician must go after a private citizen like that. And they wouldn't find anything if they tried, because I'm doing what every citizen has to do by law. But I sometimes feel like if you're not getting the value, you should be able to stop paying. It's the same thing for a TV license. It's the same thing for having to pay for insurance on something where you feel you're being ripped off, all of that kind of stuff. And then I did tweet, I think it was last week, because Athol Trollip, who's with Action SA, said he wanted to congratulate the mayor of Pretoria for doing such a wonderful job, and she's such a great, upstanding person, and he's so proud of her. And I said, yeah, it's coming from like a guy's name is Asshole with a lisp, and it got quite a lot of attention. Some of it positive, some of it not so positive. But again, I don't really care.
Yeah.
How are they doing? Who is this mayor? And sorry, who's my mayor? And should I give a damn at this point? Because I really don't.
Yeah, I think it's important. I mean, like most people in Action SA, she comes from the DA. She was the chief of staff of a previous DA mayor.
Disgruntled DA.
Well, inevitably.
Because that's what it is, right? It's DDA. It's the Disgruntled Democratic Alliance. That's
essentially
Michael Beaumont,
Athol Trollip.
Athol Trollip.
Yeah.
These are the people who didn't like being in the DA and thought they could do it on their own. And good for them.
And now they're looking for a reason to exist.
How's that going, guys? How's that going? By the way, I'm not saying this in defense of the DA either. There are lots of things that I don't like about them, but we're not here to play either ors. So this woman, she used to be in the DA?
Yeah, she used to be in the DA, used to be my deputy mayor for, I think, about 7 or 8 months. But the fact is, Action SA has been in government in Tshwane far longer than I was the mayor. So back in 2021, they joined the DA coalition, or the coalition that was led by a DA mayor. They held certain portfolios. And at a critical time, probably after the very disappointing result of the 2024 election, they realized whatever this is, it's not working for us. And that's when they exchanged loyalties and switched to the ANC and the EFF. And
that's also where Herman started like really disliking white people.
Absolutely, turned into this crazy. Well, he's always been a bit deranged. I mean, that's nothing.
I don't think so. Hey, I mean, I used to have good conversations with him. I thought he was an earnest guy, and
I don't know. He was with the Free Market Foundation, libertarian.
Yeah,
and within seconds, all of those libertarian beliefs in freedom and non-racial. I mean, that fell apart. Yeah, remember when he was mayor of Joburg?
Yeah.
What pissed many people off was that when they started complaining about bad services, which inevitably, if you're a mayor, you're going to face complaints. He said, no, this is racism. This is privilege.
Look, I mean,
so whatever derangement Herman has, it started fairly soon after he got into power.
I think
I'm not sure he was convinced about the stuff that he said before.
I don't think he's a horrible person. I just think he's showing his true colors because he was backed into a corner. And when people are backed into a corner, sometimes they do the right thing and they rise up and they impress you, and sometimes they just climb into victim. And
it's a stress test. It's a stress test.
And I'm sorry, because I actually thought the guy had a contribution to make and a lot of potential. Now I just see this bitter guy who feels like he's been rebuffed. And you can hear it in his language. He's like, you've rejected Herman. When he starts speaking in the third person.
Third person.
Anyway. Yeah. Okay. So you're on the sidelines now as the opposition, and you can complain every now and then when there's something going on in council, but there's not really much else for you to do, which is why you carry on with the other stuff. What's the plan to get back in, or what's your long-term plan? Are you going to stay out?
So the bad news about all of this was we were betrayed by a coalition partner who vowed never to put the ANC in power. And they've now put the EFF in power for the first time. That's the bad news. It's bad results for the city. You're probably going to get quite a hefty increase in property rates. We can talk about tax revolt.
Then they must clean. They must clean up the river in front of my house, and then I'll talk.
The good news is that very little will be left of Action SA at the next election. There is going to be a reckoning. I don't think they've got a constituency. They've betrayed everyone that believed in them. They've made all sorts of promises to different constituencies, and so it is worthwhile for me and for us to stay in the game.
Okay.
To stay on top of what is going on in the city council. One of the things that we did achieve in power in the 18 months, we brought in a very good city manager, a guy by the name of Johan Mettler. And if you've read a book called How to Steal a City, he's one of the characters there, not one of those stealing the city, but it was a story about Nelson Mandela Bay, where basically Treasury brought in guys from the outside. Mettler was the municipal manager of Paarl. They took him to Nelson Mandela Bay. And you mentioned Athol Trollip before, when he was still a DA guy.
He used to be in Nelson Mandela Bay.
Yeah. He had Mettler as a city manager, and they did a good job before Trollip was removed, and Mettler was also driven out there. So, good city manager. He's brought in people from the outside. And that's important, because if you have a dysfunctional institution, it doesn't help recycling the folks that are there.
Well, especially with corruption, because they all have their network of patronage.
Exactly. You want to disrupt that.
Upset that,
Yeah, you want to disrupt that. And that's good news. And if we can protect those people to the extent that they're competent, obviously we're not going to protect people who mess up, but there is something worth fighting for. And there is certainly a great deal to lose if South Africa's capital city goes wrong.
Absolutely.
It is incredibly positive that the ANC is tanking in the polls. It sends a very, very good message to Panyaza Lesufi, who did everything in his power to keep us out of the...
He kind of engineered that, right?
He engineered it, absolutely. And I had a predecessor. My immediate predecessor was a guy called Murunwa Makorela, unrehabilitated insolvent, who won the vote because a few Action SA councillors voted for him. He was then found out, and an unrehabilitated insolvent can't be a city councillor, just like you can't be a lawyer.
Or a director of a company.
Or a director of a company. So he's found out, and then he falsified his supposed rehabilitation order.
He's also a fraud.
He's a fraud.
Okay.
I mean, rest in peace. He passed away subsequently.
Okay.
But I mean, that is the kind of thing that Panyaza Lesufi has subjected Gauteng metros to. And if you see the decay in Joburg, unfortunately, the decisions now being taken in the Tshwane metro is Joburg is the model.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
That's not good. Mo Rabbit says you were a great mayor. Very impressive when the shit hit the fan. Good communication, not corrupt as far as we're aware. Actually, the opposite. Then Mapelo says, I also tried by all means to avoid going to the CBD of Durban. How's that place doing? Do you know? You talk to other people in the party about Durban?
I think Durban is doing a little bit better.
Have we written Durban off? Have we let Durban go?
I think the place that is by far in the worst condition, infrastructure-wise, is Joburg.
Yeah.
I mean, if you see the traffic lights being sewn off and, the collapsing of the road surfaces.
What is it? I noticed on a road in Pretoria the other day, you'll know better than almost anyone I can think of. Why do people cut down the lights? The street lights, because there was a whole road where there were just lights.
I mean, they steal the inside. They strip the cable.
Oh, is it the cables?
There's the cable.
Sometimes you guys have left the whole light. I mean, surely the metal there is more valuable than the cables.
Sometimes you strike it lucky. Well, you, the criminal, and you get some copper. Other times you just get to see what's on the inside. And they do the same with traffic lights. They strip the insides. And a traffic signal costs like 800K. So
800,000 rand.
Yes.
Why?
I mean, that's the going rate. That's what it costs. It's a very intricate. I'm not an engineer, but
I think they're lying to you.
They'll strip.
I mean, it's a pole with three different colored lights on it, and it needs a little transmitter on the top.
So I'm absolutely open to being fact checked about this. Cape Town did an interesting thing. No, listen to this. Cape Town did an interesting thing where they basically put together a price list of what stuff costs, because municipalities get
ripped off.
They get ripped off, absolutely, like a light bulb and so on.
Suddenly you're feeding 20 families on the cost of a single light bulb.
Yeah, so if you consult the Cape Town price list, it's about 800K for a traffic light, and I actually checked that because once that came out, I'm like, I have to check a traffic light.
Let's just look at the average salary in this country is between 5 and 10,000 rand. Okay, and I'm giving it a wide and generous margin of error here because they say that the average South African subsists on way less than that because we have such huge unemployment and we're a welfare state and all of these things.
So but probably closer to the upper band in the cities, but
let's even say 8,000 rand. Okay, now this is 100 times the average person's monthly salary for one traffic light.
Yes.
That just can't be right if you think about how many traffic lights there are.
And listen, I mean, it's not just the light; it's the entire electrical system that supports it.
I mean, it has to be connected, reconnected.
So the thing is, the folks strip this stuff for negligible scrap metal prices, and it costs a great deal of money to repair it.
And now are municipalities in the rest of the world coming up with ways to replace that with whether it's fiber optic cable or things that don't necessarily have a market value when they're not in a traffic light?
Yeah, I mean, you try and it's not just traffic lights, it's street lights, it's conductors. You try and replace as much copper as you can with aluminium, which
that's not
sometimes that works, but sometimes they strip it first to see what's in there.
Oh my God.
But you can also use technology. The argument I've made in the council is we must spend far less money on stationary guards at places who stand around with whatever it is that they use, and use motion detectors, facial recognition. You get really state-of-the-art technology to protect assets in the private sector. But I think because a lot of ANC politicians have interests in two businesses in particular, water tankers and stationary guard security companies, what they call watchman services, that model is sort of being protected.
Are the ANC involved in that, huh? There are a lot of people in the ANC who own security companies.
Absolutely. Well, there's now a thing which the municipality in Tshwane is investigating. Deputy Mayor Bonzo Modise from the ANC.
His name's Bonzo. Is his name really Bonzo?
His name is that's what he's called. His real name is Eugene.
But that's one letter short of or extra than Bozo. And I can't believe that this is what he calls himself. This is what he wants people to know.
So Bonzo was a director of a security company that has a tender with the city, and he claims that he sold his interest to his secretary or whatever. And we've uncovered that, and he's being investigated. But yes, it's a pattern. If you look at businesses where barriers to entry is relatively low, and it's easy to use some muscle to make money, there you'll find comrades. Same with water tankers. People, use their muscle as a ward boss. They command the water tanker. You force the company to subcontract an ANC ward councillor. And that's an easy way to make money, and obviously very exploitative.
Okay, so you knew we were going to talk about things like traffic lights and rubbish and all these kinds of things. I'm sure that you're tired of talking about those things, especially if you're not the mayor and you can't do anything about it. But you maybe answer things like, for example, how much a traffic light costs, which honestly I had no idea about, and I find that pretty interesting. Bewildering, but interesting. Henny Nordia says the people of this country need a mindset change. The roads are not your bin. The number of people chucking rubbish out of their cars is very disturbing. I think there is something about how we as South Africans, I'm going to include myself not because I'm throwing things out of the car, but because sometimes when we see these traffic lights that have been knocked over or barriers on the highway that have to be repaired every couple of days, and I mean, I've had some accidents. You don't think about that property as being our collective responsibility. You just think of it, someone will fix it. It's the government, it's the municipality. That's clearly why we have to pay those exorbitant municipal rates and taxes. But there is something about how we just don't seem to treat anything outside of our immediate possession with any respect. It's a problem in South Africa. And you can see it because people will, when I was a kid, it was like, funny to steal a street sign. And I had friends of mine, and I think I stole a couple of political party posters, which you're not allowed to do. But one of my friends had a stop sign in his bedroom at home. And I don't know what those cost, but that's clearly illegal. And then you go all the way to the other end of the extreme end of this, where you have people who are wantonly going out and being destructive for no other reason than that it gives them some feeling of rebelliousness or whatever. They're throwing a brick at a municipal office window or something like that. What needs to change there? If you had a magic wand,
it is a culture change. So South Africans understand freedom. We hate dictators, we hate rules.
Yeah.
We've got an innate, almost libertarian spirit.
Yeah.
Screw whoever tells us what to do.
E-tolls.
Yeah, e-tolls.
Right.
That's
Great example.
Massive tax revolt.
Yeah.
But the fact is that tax revolts and breaking the law happens all over. It's not just, And I think what we need is a sense of responsibility that is at least as strong as that urge for freedom. Now, it's difficult to talk about responsibility when levels of trust in government are rock bottom. When you feel that I pay my rates and taxes, but the mayor really doesn't care what it looks like in Centurion or wherever it is you stay, then
you can't do much about the people in Centurion, can you?
Wonderful. There are wonderful people in Centurion. Wonderful people in Centurion.
I don't know.
Having to contend with a lot of sinkholes. So we have to establish governments that people trust. And there are a few things that, for instance, a mayor can do to win back public trust. To say there's certain things we won't accept. We will fire people who breach the public trust or misspend public money. Small little acts do change culture. But listen, we're a young country. Our economy hasn't grown. We've got a massive rate of urbanization that's putting pressure on everything.
Sure.
So don't be too hard on us, but tough decisions will have to be made if the culture is to change.
No, I don't think anyone in South Africa is laboring under the misconception that we're suddenly going to have a level of service delivery that they're getting in Copenhagen overnight. Okay.
Yeah.
That's not going to happen. Nobody's that unrealistic.
Although in Cape Town, they're pretty much, they're pretty much done.
Listen, I don't know. You might want to give your mate Jordan Hill Lewis some credit. I think that Cape Town runs beautifully. Yeah. I still don't want to live there.
Yeah, me neither. Me neither.
I like it where I am. But if they could just
the rest of the country is different.
Yeah, and if they could just get like 2% better every year, that would be a big thing, because that compounds over time.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's not hard to achieve. And also, if we can just get these people who just think that the public purse is a trough. Here's the comment from who's this? Moon Dancer, who says, if the ANC hadn't started stealing all the municipal funds as soon as they got into power, maybe there'd be funds in the coffers to replace the traffic lights at very least. Congo Chris saying, half the problem would be solved if the pigs in government stopped putting their grubby trotters into the cookie jar all the time. There'd be money if it stopped being stolen. I think that's that trust gap that you're talking about.
Absolutely.
Right?
And there have been bad players, and that's what we focus on, the pigs and the trough and so forth. A bigger problem are the rules of the game.
Yeah.
And the rules of the game have been cadre deployment, so appointing political agents into jobs requiring objective technical expertise, but also procurement laws that force you to consider factors that have no relation to value for money.
There was that big internet tender, wasn't there? Or something. There was that huge tender that you had to put to an end.
Yeah, there were so many.
There was something. I remember there was one that was particularly controversial because you found out, like, the city was being charged an extortionate amount of money for providing some sort of service.
And the rules of the game, the procurement laws, are set up in a way that encourages that kind of a thing. So corruption is one thing, bad players. But we're going to have to change the laws, and BEE, which forms a big component of policy decisions, is an enormous constraint.
Okay, so how come there's still people in your party who are standing up for BEE? I mean, I hear it every now and then, not all the time, but there are people in the DA who are like, for some reason, I don't know what it is. It's like they're trying to still be good liberals, so they'll say, no, but there is a way which is going to make BEE. It's just got to work properly. If BEE works properly, and ordinary black business people, I haven't heard
that from a DA person since at least 2019. So
it's not
you
that
could
long
criticize.
Ago.
No, that's when the DA had our policy conference, and I don't know if you've spoken to someone called Gwen Ngwenya.
Yeah, she's smart.
She was our head of policy, and she devised what we call an economic justice policy, where we made a very clear break to say, to empower, you don't need to look at race. You can look at socioeconomic factors that
Right.
really drive empowerment, that really help. And if you are looking to draw business to South Africa, and I'm not going to talk about Starlink. I think everyone's talked about Starlink way too much. But if you want to draw significant investment to this country, people who build factories and warehouses and data centers, let's start by saying, instead of having to give up 30% to 50% of your company in order to do business in South Africa.
By the way, giving it up to someone who's one of Cyril's friends.
Yeah,
I mean, we're not,
the very small group of people that form the beneficiaries of
this is it. It's a cabal of
it's a cabal.
And these guys have all the BEE money.
Yes.
And it never trickles down.
Yes.
And it isn't about broad-based anything.
And the circle becomes smaller and smaller, and the goods and services and the quality that you get become less and less.
Yeah.
So the point is, I think we've reached, and the World Bank has said it this week.
Yes, correct.
Let us start with foreign investment. Let's say to the big companies who want to build stuff and create jobs for South Africans, spend some money to build a creche or to take on a few trainees or to do internships.
Do you think
you don't need to give away equity in your business in order to do business in South Africa?
Let's be frank about this, though. The ANC can't give up on BEE because it's the meal ticket for so many people. The whole reason they got involved in the ANC wasn't to, bring liberation or to play their part in the transformation of South Africa, make it a burgeoning democracy with Rainbow Nation sort of overtures and lovely stories about how things are, picking up and it's a good story to tell and all that stuff. Most of the people who are involved in these crooked deals are involved in these crooked deals because they're just looking after them.
Absolutely.
They're just filling their own back pocket and looking after some, 20 family members that we don't even know about. This is not something they're interested in. They're not going to abandon BEE because it's their meal ticket.
Well, we'll have to fight. That's the point. I mean, no, they won't let go of party control of state control of society and economy as far as possible. They won't let go of the view of South Africa as being a racial zero-sum game where a benefit to racial minorities is a disbenefit to them. They won't let go without a fight, and that's why we have to fight. So the good news in this country and in politics is the ANC is not as powerful as they used to be. They don't dominate everything anymore.
Yeah.
And I think the blue steel that you saw when we said no VAT increase, we need more of that.
Yeah.
I fully appreciate.
I mean, there's been criticisms about you guys and again, you're not here to be a spokesperson for the DA, so I'm not going to expect you to. But since I don't speak to that many DA people, and we're sitting here now, maybe you can, maybe you can't. People are very pissed off about the Bella bill. People are very pissed off about this expropriation without compensation thing. I understand sometimes the wheels turn slowly. You have to challenge these things in court. You have to work from within and without. I don't know all the details about what conversations are going on with the president, whether he's ignoring you like he ignored AfriForum or whoever else he's been ignoring. I don't know how that works. So if you can fill me in with anything, it'll make me feel, okay, well, there are people who care, who are doing these things, then great. But as far as I can tell, NHI is coming, whether we like it or not. Education, if you've got kids and you want to have them educated in their mother tongue, that's going to become increasingly difficult, especially because now all schools are being run through with the same comb, which is obviously tricky in this country. We've got different kind of education systems, different cultural norms.
You want less state control.
I want the state
parent control.
I don't think that the state should be providing education, frankly, but that's not the world we live in. So it's a good thing I'm not president. And expropriation. I mean, if we don't defend property rights, then what I don't get is that the very greedy people who have been stealing from this country's treasury for how long now, they do understand how important property is, which is why they keep trying to take everybody else's. But what do they think is going to happen if none of us have property rights? Then it's a free-for-all, and we'll all just start taking from each other. And if Bonzo has the biggest guns, then he'll beat me. But if I have more guns than him, then I'll beat him.
Yeah.
You really want to play that game?
So let me answer the question about the DA and the GNU.
Yeah.
Essentially, a coalition is the best alternative to governing alone. It would have been great if the Moonshot Pact, under the leadership of the DA, could have governed the country. We'd have had all the cards. We'd have made all the the difference.
Water under the bridge.
Now we're a 20% party and a 60% government. It's a grand coalition. We can't get everything, but we must get something. And that something, we said, is removing the policies that are an impediment to economic growth. Because we have to get the economy growing, to get people into jobs, to lift the poor into the middle class, because a big and strong middle class is the best guarantee you have against an incompetent government. A middle class that's not dependent on politicians for their assets and income. But I think, and you've spoken to folks like Tony Leon, I'm not sure if you spoke to him after the GNU deliberations, but there was maybe too much of an optimism that this agreement would be like a partnership, there would be good faith, Cyril Ramaphosa can finally, not depend on the RET faction, the ANC, and maybe we can build something together that's new. A bit of a kumbaya moment. Mm-hmm. And the markets also reflected that. Lots of positivity and so forth. But you also have to learn from experience. And experience tells us now that the ANC is not interested in a partnership. They're not interested in good faith. If you listen to what Helen Zille tells about Bella, basically the ANC colluded with Good in order to put an entirely different option as to the settlement that was reached.
Quickly? We'll get back to this in a second because you're making sense to me, and I'm pleased to be educated on this stuff. Why is Good still a thing? I mean, it's
God
like
knows.
It's Patricia
I don't know.
and that one mate of hers in Cape Town.
It's because we don't have a threshold for parties in this country. Any idiot can get into parliament with, I think, 20,000 votes. We need a 1% threshold. It'll turn a lot of the chaos into a bit of order. Okay. But just to finish the point. Yes, so you learn from experience, mm-hmm. and we have to reorient ourselves and say the GNU is not a kumbaya moment. It is a beachhead in a battle for the future of the country. So use the GNU to change things, to challenge laws. We saw a bit of that with the budget, with VAT. We need more of that. We need more blue steel. And I think that is going to win back a little bit of the trust that we might have lost with the ambivalence and the poor communication on some of the issues that you've mentioned.
Is that message resonating? Because so far I've seen the DA come under a lot of criticism, some of it fair. I can't say that I'm particularly moved by the future, past, present of any political party in this country at this stage.
You're not moved by politicians.
I've never been. And maybe it's just because I'm cynical and I don't trust people who say that they want to do things for other people. I usually think there's a twisted sense of compassion which gets turned into an actual, deep down inside, it's a need for power. That notwithstanding, because I do think there are people who are trying to do good. I don't trust them until they prove it. But I feel like the DA has been messaging quite badly in the last couple of months since the GNU started. Or do your internal polls, which I know you guys do all the time, do they show something different? And are there parties that are gaining? I saw an interesting poll that was handled, I think it was in one of the major newspapers recently. It could have been Report, but I'm ready to be corrected.
Social Research Foundation.
Social Research Foundation.
The same one that found the ANC polling at 32%.
So they said that the ANC's support has been dipping quite dramatically since the GNU started.
Yes, 32% from the 40% that they got in the election.
Okay, so even if that's somewhat right, in the Social Research Foundation were one of the people who actually called the election. They were the closest
within
to the
decimals.
Mark. Yeah, they were very, very sharp. So whoever they're polling, they've got a good sample there.
Absolutely.
They know what they're doing clearly.
Incredible.
If that's true, how do you think the DA has adjusted to the post-GNU world and the messaging that you're talking about? Is it this economic thing that you're talking about? If we can promise people economic growth, that'll resonate. That's what we need. And how do you think the other parties are faring? I mean, who is growing?
So when I talk about economic growth and creating jobs, that's not just what polls best. I mean, that's what the country needs. if you're going to look at polling,
I agree with you, but
the polling will
you know,
fluctuate and
sometimes
your message will fluctuate. You look like a dancing monkey.
Sometimes you promise people free T-shirts, and that gets you.
Yeah, well, that's a small thing. That's tactics, and don't confuse tactics with strategy.
Okay.
I mean, strategy must be to grow the economy and create jobs.
Right.
So we're looking good in the polls. We're at 25%, which is 5% odd stronger than we got in the election.
Yeah.
But we would be very, very stupid to just look at the poll and say, things are going great. Because polls don't tell you what the result is of forces that are now at play. The GNU is a new thing for us. Opposition was our comfort zone. Mm-hmm. It's easy to speak in opposition. It's difficult to get things done when you're the junior partner in a government of national unity that's been run by the ANC for how many years, that captured the state, and everything is default ANC policy unless you challenge it. I mean, even the car that you get into, that's default policy unless you say, I don't want this. Yeah. So it's a new space, and we would be very foolish to look at the polls and say things are going okay. And Gareth, remember, I'm not here as a DA spokesperson. I know. So knowing my party and the caliber of the folks there, we do listen to criticism. And we do have space for internal debate. And I can tell you that we must learn and we must adjust. And as I said, more blue steel instead of just going along. And I think we will win back the trust. We can win back the trust, but nothing is for granted.
How are the other parties looking? I didn't pay much attention to that SRF thing. I just looked at the top line thing.
I think, Gauteng and McKenzie had a bit of a... what do you call it? The opposite of a dip.
Nice. He definitely saw a massive spike.
A spike. Yeah. So he hit a spike, and it's a nice portfolio to have. It's a feel-good portfolio. Sure. Minister of Sport, patriotism.
And he's been very good at communicating that feel-good stuff.
I still don't know what he actually believes. I mean, some folks are convinced he's a conservative or a libertarian. I haven't picked that up. But he's back down. The Freedom Front is the same that they got. Action SA, they don't register in the poll. I mean, they're dead. So we haven't really seen anything of the other parties, but that should not make us or anyone else complacent about our politics.
Okay, yeah. I mean, Dirk Kutsia says in the comments here that polling report by the SRF, so the ANC, support up from 40 in May to 45 in September, and then down to 32 in this latest one. It's interesting. The DA would have more confidence from the voters if John was still thin and silver-tongued. Yeah, I like giving John trouble about like the pork crackling or whatever it is that he's having to fit in while he's running around as Minister of Agriculture. You're the second largest party. Stop dancing to the ANC's tune, says Carla, and start acting like the true opposition by rallying the other parties.
Like we did with VAT.
Yeah.
So VAT was a fairly... I'm not saying it's an easy fight, but VAT is something everyone can agree on. Even if you're Casata, who took the benefit of a pay increase that now causes a deficit, you could say, no, we don't want higher VAT. So, we don't have to fight any particular ideological corner to fight VAT. But what we did with VAT is important. It sets a new trend. And I think we can do it with more and more policies. But you also have to be strategic. Yeah? Oh. Every armchair critic is saying, just leave the GNU. That's fine. That's one of the options. But it's an option that you can only exercise once.
Yeah.
And your toolbox or your kit has got other things like voting against budgets and other means that you can use. And I don't think we've exhausted that. And quite frankly, I think that some people in the ANC would like us to walk away.
Oh, yeah, it's probably, an irritation to some of them. Okay, so Mapelo says, and this is something that comes up all the time. Again, you're not here to speak for the DA, but you've been asked about this, I'm sure, personally, like, DA is racist. That's what he says. Mapelo says DA is racist, which, I mean, okay, where do we start with dealing with that?
So if you want to know what policies don't work, look at the policies that have been implemented in this country in the past 20 years. The GDP of South Africa per capita is the same now as it was on the last day that Thabo Mbeki was the president. And if you ask ChatGTP, assume 2% economic growth, how long is it going to take us to get back to the 2012 level of per capita GDP? It says to you 2036.
Wow, that's horrific.
So whatever has been implemented in this country has not worked for people, hasn't worked for Black South Africans, certainly, who are most in need of economic growth, job creation, of opportunities to be lifted into the middle class standing that you and I enjoy. When we oppose it as the DA, it doesn't make us racist. When we say that BEE doesn't work, that preferential procurement doesn't work, and when we offer an alternative, it doesn't make us racist.
So why do people keep saying this? I mean, Mapelo's not an idiot. I mean, he makes some very valid comments a lot of the time.
Because tribal politics is easy. I mean, it's got this natural pull. You know, tribalism has this natural pull. You know, our side, your side. And a lot of people in the ANC play these tribal drums to escape accountability, and it resonates.
Yeah.
And the ANC's got a bigger network. I mean, when the World Bank says drop BEE or reform it, it's not the ANC that jumps up first. It's, you know, the Black Business Council that says, oh, no, because they form part of an existing ecosystem of the ANC that benefits from policies that don't benefit the majority of South Africans.
Okay, so I want to know what it's like when you have to go to a party conference or whatever. I mean, do you guys actually get along? You have tea and biscuits? Is it a big talk shop? Is it like going to a corporate conference here at the convention center? Everybody mills around and they make small talk. How does it actually work? I've never been to any of these things.
Well, I mean, listen, we've got rules and we've got order. And that's probably what sets us apart from most other major political parties. So you don't get people beating each other with chairs or intimidating each other.
Didn't that happen in the Pretoria Council once?
No, that constantly happens. In the
Really?
Pretoria. Absolutely.
They pick up chairs and hit each other over the head with them.
The MMC for Environmental Affairs is on record as saying he wants to see the blood of Afrikaners.
Really?
I mean, he says we got hate speech laws.
Yeah.
And I don't think the police even, you know, they even lifted a finger to investigate this. So, I mean, Tshwane Council it's a disaster everywhere. But the DA, because we need to be an antidote to the chaos. Yes, our party congresses are probably a little bit boring compared to the street fighting and the brawling of the ANC and the EFF. But there is, good competition. You'll see a diversity of people from different walks of life, from different backgrounds, a whole lot of debate. But it's orderly. That's the point. We need a bit of order in this country.
Yeah. Okay. I just thought maybe it would be. Is there anybody who kind of has? I can imagine if Helen is walking around, then people want to talk to her.
Yeah.
She's like a
celebrity.
Well, she's also like the elder of
Yes.
the tribe, right?
Yeah.
So she's like walking around, and people want to talk to her. But I'm sure it must be complicated when you used to be the mayor and now you're not the mayor anymore. Do they give you less attention at these things?
Well, I don't know. I mean, the thing is, you don't have bodyguards and stuff keeping people away, although bodyguards aren't allowed in DA congresses. So, no, I mean...
Did you have bodyguards while you were mayor?
Yeah.
You had to have, because you had death threats, right?
My family was threatened at the height of the strike. And so if you're a minister, probably need fewer bodyguards, but if you're the mayor and you need to go to troubled areas and you need to, check up on stuff despite intimidation, you're probably going to need some.
No, I mean, if you're
muscle.
dealing with like scrap metal dealers and oaks who are involved in like criminal pursuits, you can't really take a chance, I suppose.
Yeah, or bloodthirsty colleagues of yours in council.
They really want to kill you. That's
that you have to
unbelievable.
visit in their communities.
Wow.
So, no, I mean, I don't think the DA has got the celebrity culture.
No.
So you see Helen, at a federal congress, and you say, "Hey, Helen," and she's probably walking so fast because she's working. So just, hey, hi, and that's it. So no champagne, no VIP section.
Yeah, because like if
no
you go to ANC
Johnny Walker
things,
Blue, none of that stuff.
No, ANC things, there's a hierarchy.
Yeah,
man.
and that's culture. I mean, that's organizational culture. It makes a difference.
What do you think of all this noise being made around Donald Trump and white Afrikaners in particular, but white people? The fact that he's offered refugee status. I have to kind of smirk when I say it because it's just funny to me, not how it's right or wrong or people are taking it seriously or not, but how incensed certain people have become that Donald Trump in Washington, D.C. has noticed that the policies of this government are shit. Like, and they're furious about it. They're like, AfriForum is treasonous, and Solidariteit, these people must be arrested when they re-enter the country, and how dare they tell the rest of the world? And then they talk about misinformation. And I'm like, what's the misinformation? Everything that they've told Trump, he already probably knows.
You just have to turn on CNN to see how much lefties love Trump. I mean,
they hate him.
They love it. He's revived interest in politics. People are watching CNN again. People stop watching CNN.
What do they live to get upset?
So it's got this maddening effect. And when Trump talks about refugees and AfriForum,
when he argues with Zelensky,
that gives folks who hate AfriForum and whose worldview has always been these people are bad. It just gives them, it's like catnip. They love it. It stokes everything. But it's important for us, Gareth, to realize this is not the domestic politics of the United States. We don't need to like Trump or not like Trump, but we need to act in the best interest of the country. And that means not pissing off the United States, whether it is Biden that's the president or Trump that's the president. These presidents come in 4-year terms, and we might have a Democrat in the White House in 4 years' time. But America is a major trading partner of this country, second only to China. Their fixed investment here is double the size of China. You look at BMW and Roslyn, third biggest export from there are BMW X3s directly to the United States, thanks to AGOA.
Really?
Look at Ford in Silverton, thousands of jobs. Another example of direct US investment. So we've got an interest, if economic growth and jobs is our main objective as a country, to not alienate whether Democratic or Republican the United States, and just to shut up sometimes when we don't have anything good to say.
Or, and this is not something I'm addressing to Cilliers Brink, who's our guest today, but Nomvula Mokonyane.
Oh, goodness, in Iran.
She might not want to be inviting the Iranians to have tea with her, for example, when she knows that that part of the world is a particularly sticky place right now, and America is very clearly defined on the other side of that sticky place. It's like you stepping in, in the cartoons where someone steps on like a rake or a broom and it hits them in the face. It's like, this is Nomvula Mokonyane. She can't help herself.
And that's what I mean by some people loving the provocation, because it gives them an opportunity just to, rile things up and meeting with Iran. So Nomvula Mokonyane, let's make this point. The Zondo Commission said she should be prosecuted for taking chocho money from Bosasa.
She took money. She also took deliveries of meat and alcohol. Let's not forget that. That was lots of fun. Meat and alcohol. Okay, she got boxes of meat. You could bribe a whole minister of water with a box of like beef cutlets.
So you send your Bosasa rep to go meet with the Iranians. I mean, what did she go with a bag? Was it empty when she got back? And that is what damages South Africa's national interest.
And then, it's easy to blame like AfriForum and say that they're out there, they're disappointing us, they're creating a separate diplomatic channel. But if this is what we're doing to ourselves, you can't really complain about them.
Yeah.
Right?
We were laughing. AfriForum could probably put up a green screen with the White House in the background and just stay in Pretoria and make an announcement. And there will be an absolute meltdown on X.
Well, they're still melting. I mean, the people pulling their hair out, and the TV coverage has been fascinating too, because you've got these like really angry show hosts. I mean, these people have not given a damn about the fact that we've got a murder rate that's sky high, that there's gender-based violence, and they pay lip service occasionally. But they're more angry about this than they are about potential 2% VAT hike. You didn't see any outrage about that. There was maybe one or two commentators who were like, could kill the economy, and we should take it a little more seriously. But AfriForum, this is worth getting upset about.
It's that catnip. It has a maddening effect.
You're right. It's catnip.
And the commentators, some of them are so out of touch with the lives of ordinary people.
Yeah.
And what's actually going on.
Yeah, that's exactly right. What sort of news do you pay attention to? Because I suppose in politics, and you are actively in politics, you have to be careful what your sources are too. There's so many news platforms in this country who are completely compromised, who have just about less than zero in terms of credibility. They're still going though, and many like old people who don't know how to change the channel on the TV, or or they still subscribe to a newspaper that hasn't arrived for 20 years. They stand outside in the morning hoping someone will drop it off,
or pay for the full DSTV package.
But there are people like that. We all know them. They're like just desperately hoping that someone will give them the information the way that they used to get it back in the 60s and 70s or the 80s even.
Yeah.
And that's just not the way it works. If you don't know how to get your news online, you're in big trouble. Where do you get yours?
Well, in fact, I was one of the last folks who bought the Rapport newspaper just to get it in print. So I read on the left and the right.
Or something at home?
I read on the left and the right. On the left, probably Financial Times,
Okay.
and on the right, Washington, not the Washington Post, the Wall Street Journal, and they've got an excellent podcast called the Potomac Watch.
Okay.
And it's wonderful. You're right. The access to information that you now have through podcasts. You listen to a commentator like Neil Ferguson, the historian, and his take on what is happening in global politics now. I think his podcast called Goodfellows, and he also did something with Sam Harris. And the level of insight that you get from listening to those conversations, you simply can't get that in an op-ed. I mean, it's amazing what this has done, and it's also given freedom to folks like you to say what you want. Although I suspect you've always said what you want, but without fearing consequences.
Sure,
but
I draw the distinction between what I do and what journalists, in inverted commas, are meant to do. Certainly, what a news site is meant to do. If your job is presenting information to people, there's a way to kind of walk the middle line. Of course, when it comes to editorial and commentary, you almost expect,
but a lot of news is editorialized.
Totally. A story is presented as a news story when actually it's politics.
Yeah. So I've got a lot of respect for people who say, these are my colors, this is the angle that I'm coming from, because at least they're announcing themselves. They're not pretending to be.
Yeah, but in this country, do people do that?
Oh no.
I mean, on if you look at South African television, or even the management and editorial boards of many of our news agencies, they don't tell you who they voted for. You have to guess, and usually it's not so hard to guess because you can tell. But it would be nice if they were just upfront about it, so that we knew they were either a mouthpiece for the opposition, a mouthpiece for government, that they were, just basically rebellious, whatever their position might be. It would be useful to know.
I suspect that most people, you just look at the comment section on News 24, for example.
Yeah.
Very often very hostile to what's being written. So I think most people who read understand.
I thought they disabled their comment section.
Did they?
That must have been recent. I don't read News 24, so I don't know.
But I'm more worried about people who don't read at all. Who don't consume any media, and whose only access to what's happening in the world might be SABC community radio, which in many instances is excellent, by the way. I mean, SABC, like RSG, the radio station that my tribe listens to. Yeah. That's a good station. It's a good, solid, balanced station. But I do think that there's been a democracy in the media. There's far more access. There's far more choice. But I also think a lot of what happens on X has got absolutely nothing to do. What's X's penetration rate in South Africa?
We've got 4.5 million users.
And how many of those actually engage and read the stuff that's going on? So
and to be fair, I mean, again, they never miss the opportunity to bash you politicians. But a lot of politicians in this country take the commentariat on X much too seriously too.
Absolutely.
Right?
And in the past, I think the DA stepped into the same trap.
Yeah.
But I think that you have to be on X because that's where journalists hang out.
Sure.
In fact, many journalists only get their news from what's said on X. But that doesn't represent how ordinary South Africans feel. So if we're talking about how polarized South Africa is, how angry people are, AfriForum and so on and so on, I don't think that has got any foothold in the lives of ordinary people who just have to live and pay bills and
Definitely.
wish for the best
definitely.
for their children.
I couldn't agree more. I think it's just ridiculous how we assume that that's a barometer on the real undercurrents in South Africa. Like, most people don't even care what's trending on X. But that brings us to end of the first hour, so we're going to spend a little bit more time. Thank you for making time. I know you've got a little bit more now that you're not mayor, but it's nice to actually talk like this and not have time constraints. But we're going to have some fun. There's a lot of other stuff that I want to talk about. Apparently, there is a top South African private school that could lose its land. This is interesting. We'll talk a little bit about that. Also, a German forest and a story around that. Maybe the climate people will be excited by this one. And then Trump's tariffs, which have ignited a global trade response. We'll talk a little bit about that too, and a whole lot more. Don't go anywhere. This is a Wednesday morning on the Real Network, Gareth Cliff Show. And like, subscribe, etc., etc. You know how to do that stuff. I don't need to treat you like a kid and spoon feed you. Do it, please. Thank you. Okay, good. We're agreed. Bye.
I'm the victim.
Yeah.
Of potholes. I drive sports cars. You can't fix potholes when they are wet. You cannot work on a road surface that is wet. The biggest problem with people complaining at this particular time, it happens every year. From December up until February, there's heavy rains that are happening.
Yes.
Now, water is the biggest enemy of asphalt. What we would call tar.
Yes, it washes
So
the roads
that is
away.
why you would find a lot of potholes during this time. And unfortunately, you can't fix potholes when they are wet. You cannot work on a road surface that is wet. So which is why the potholes will take longer to fix at this particular time.
Of course.
But once the rain has stopped, you will see JRA working. But it doesn't mean we do not work. We do respond where it gets dry. The teams go out and they go and fix. The only work that we do during a rainy time or when it rains is unblocking of stormwater drains and so on and so on. But the road infrastructure we cannot touch when it's wet because it will be waste of asphalt.
Maybe like, yeah, just only a picture, then I'll send you maybe $500, whatever.
There are fetishes that people have. Toes, they are toe only fans people. Like, OnlyFans woman just shoots her toes and people buy the
They
toe
get paid, ne?
They get paid for toes. Have you found men like wanting to pay to see your breasts or sexually for your
Yeah, I
breasts?
get
Or
that a lot.
fetishes like that.
What
But-
happened?
No, I just only got a DM on TikTok.
Yeah.
You know, they have like, I think, 1,000 messages on TikTok.
Sure.
Yeah.
For
Then,
guys saying
yeah, please, send me your boobs for $800. So like, baby, look.
$800.
That's like 16,000 rand, 15,000 rand. Eh?
Is it 50,000?
Gee whiz, and you got 1,000 of those.
And Sister Bettina's
Yeah.
looking at you right now like, hey,
I want gigantic.
tell my grandmother to sweep these things.
We've commodified women's bodies. So, like, even something that for you is a medical condition. Like, how crazy is that?
People are so
It's
crazy.
a medical condition, and people are like, I'll pay to see that. Like, who's gonna
Guys,
be like,
there's
yo, you got a huge
OnlyFans
growth on your
women
back?
Fall pregnant. I'm not saying they fall pregnant to do this, but the pregnant women go and do OnlyFans while they're pregnant, because there's guys who want to see a pregnant woman doing certain things to.
Right, good morning and welcome to this rainy Wednesday. I don't know if it's rainy across the whole country, but there could be people listening to us anywhere in the world. So I'm just letting you know what it's like here. I don't know. You could have great weather where you are. It could be the middle of the night. if you're watching us live, this is The Real Network. It's the 5th of March, and we've got the former mayor of Pretoria in the studio with me. It's good to have him here because we've basically he's had to just defend his municipality, his party, himself for the last hour, and we're going to stop that now so you can relax. Not that you were particularly tense about it, actually. Handled it pretty well. So someone asked me to please talk about this, and I still don't know what it is, but apparently South Africa's government, the ANC government, the GNU as well, have mandated that all Spaza shops need to be registered by, last month, or they need to face penalties aimed at enforcing hygiene standards and fair competition. Okay, so why does the government have to get involved in Spaza shops? Let's look at this devil's advocate, both sides, right? I would say my leaning is government should have nothing to do with this. Why should it? Because they probably have to pay the government to come and license them, right? So the government gets money to probably do nothing.
Well, I'm not sure if this involves any money, but certainly there's the risk, as we said, of rent seeking. So
yeah.
I'll issue the license.
If I want to trade with you, if you want to come and buy something at my shop, then obviously you can decide to go to another shop. You're always free to do that. That's the nice thing about free market capitalism. You don't like my shop, there's probably another one just down the road. I mean, we've got very high concentration of Spaza shops in particularly townships. In rural areas, maybe less so. So there's less choice. But hey, you chose to live in some shitty rural area where there's like one shop every 5 kilometers.
You don't always get to choose.
Well, I mean, what? They're your parents. Why the hell did they decide to have you there? So anyway, so my point is, if I want to trade with you and you want to trade with me and we're both doing it willingly, there should be no reason for government to be involved.
The run-up to this was, of course, that I think about 30 people, I stand to be corrected, but a whole lot of people passed away because evidently chips packets and foodstuffs got contaminated with pesticide or some other dangerous substance. And we just couldn't figure out where this was coming from. It's like kids especially dying because of food that they purchased.
Didn't the second kid who got poisoned first look at the first one and go, fuck, I'm not going to eat those chips?
Yeah, it's
I mean,
it would seem obvious, but I mean, if you're poor and you have to buy some lunch at school, what are you going to do? Just stop buying from Spaza shops in general?
I'm sorry.
There's an argument. There's an argument to be made.
Just because they're poor, it doesn't mean they're stupid.
There's an argument to be made that government does have some kind of a role in maintaining the public health and making sure there's some level of standard in terms of health and safety. We can argue about that.
Okay.
Maybe no.
No, this is the whole point of having this conversation. I want the other side of the argument.
That's the idea of it. But whether registering with your local municipality, and I can tell you, Gareth, as somebody on the other side, or used to be on the other side of the regulation, municipalities don't always have the capacity to enforce these things, to check up on every license.
You have the manpower for starters. I mean, do you know how many Spazas there are in Pretoria?
Oh, it must be hundreds, thousands.
Yeah.
One on each corner. So you don't have the capacity. And as we said, it creates opportunities for bribe taking.
I hate regulation as much as the next guy, says Carl, but my business faces lots of bullshit bureaucracy. Why shouldn't a Spaza shop face the same thing? A pick and pay must be registered, so why not the Spaza?
Well, maybe, but we want to encourage entrepreneurs. We want to encourage folks that don't have anything to use the means at their disposal to make a living.
Yeah, I reckon these people who run these Spaza shops, they are hardworking people.
And they're very often not South Africans because
legal immigrants
who make it across the border have got certain determination that not always, but sometimes correspond with the characteristics that you need to be a successful entrepreneur.
Yeah, and if you see the way that so many of these Spazas have, like the security they have to install internally and externally, these guys are not taking any chances, right?
Yeah. But listen, I mean, we need law and order in this country. We spoke earlier about people who use the common or the commons and to mess up and to take advantage at the public expense. So we need law and order. It's just very, very important
Damn it,
that
man,
those
you're so
rules
reasonable.
are clear.
Why do you have to be so reasonable this morning?
Well,
I was
I'm
hoping for
I'm a
fight.
DA politician. You know, can't help it.
Yeah, all right. So here's something that may or may not interest you, but I think this is quite cool. Well, it's a story. I don't agree with it, but Hilton College, one of South Africa's top private schools, faces a land claim that could impact its ownership. Founded in 1872 on land originally called Ongegund, the school has grown into a prestigious institution. There's some pictures of it, aerial view. It's beautiful there, right? That looks lovely. The school's grown into a prestigious institution of the notable alumni 2005 land claim by Nkosi Sikolwa Zuma. That's an interesting surname. Was initially dismissed as baseless, but in February 2025, the right judge, Judge M.T. Ngube, ruled the dismissal irrational, citing poor validation processes. The case has now been sent back for reconsideration with recommendations to review reports supporting the Ngqamalala community's claim. All right, so I'm going to just jump in here without knowing more than what I've just told you. But would they be that interested if it wasn't Hilton College's property? Because if you look at that aerial shot again, there's a whole lot of trees there. In the distance, you can see some kind of, it doesn't look like too much is going on, but who knows? It's maybe agriculture in the off season. But because it's Hilton College's land, it seems that it might be more valuable. And maybe this Nkosi Sikolwa Zuma sees a good payday. I don't know. I mean, he's been fighting this a long time. He must be very, very attached to this land. I'm not sure. What have you? Any thoughts on that?
Well, listen, I don't know the facts of this case. So,
other than what I've just told you, I don't know much either.
Yeah. Best of luck to Hilton. The important point, as the principle of the matter, is that there should be legal clarity about these things. But I cannot speak
the
as
one
to the
judge,
merit of that.
The
claim.
one judge says irrational to dismiss this. The other judge obviously thought it was a good idea to dismiss this. It's nice to have judges that think differently. They can't all think the same. I wonder if this isn't another case, and we've got to address this in this country, a case of like people who just see an opportunity to take something from someone who isn't them. And I'm not saying that that's the case here at all. You're right. We don't know the details. But it's like we also love beating up on rich people, rich institutions of some pedigree and merit. We like doing that in this country. Huh? If something looks like it's a little too good, there must be something wrong there. We should probably find a way to just level them a little.
I mean, people who become rich off government, I think, are legitimate targets, and there's a lot of that.
Yeah, because it's our money.
And if you're in an economy where the easiest way to riches is to get connections with the ANC and then to get some job or some tender, then that causes mistrust and distrust about prosperity. But you're quite right. We should respect wealthy people, especially those who don't make their money off of government.
Wow.
And they give us an example of what we need more of. This country needs more billionaires, quite frankly. We've lost so many billionaires to the United States, for example. I mean, they're not refugees. They're probably economic mobility that most of us don't have. But we need to be a place where billionaires can do business because they create the jobs.
Well, apparently America is now going to, so it's not just, that they want Afrikaner or white refugees. You're welcome to go if you want to go. They're also offering something Trump says is called a gold card. So they're going to do this interesting thing where they should be able to raise $1 trillion, he reckons, by selling a limited number of gold cards to people who want a green card in America. But you have to invest something like, I think it's $20 million or whatever. If you do, you get to be an American citizen. You get to run your business out of America.
If he had put that in the executive order.
Yeah. Well, then nobody would have been able to afford it, but not with our rand.
Free gold cards.
Yeah, but I mean, let's just imagine what that could do. Again, you talk about attracting billionaires. And apparently countries like Britain have seen a net outflow of capital, a net outflow of rich people. That those rich people who are tired of every kind of tax being put on them throughout the course of their lives. Every cent they earn is taxed more than once by the same government. They're eventually going to go, we don't want to be here. And they'll go to places like Dubai,
Yes.
which has seen a net increase in billionaires.
Yeah.
I think China's lost the most billionaires in the world, then Britain, and then some other European countries come into the list just after that. They're going to places where they can hold on to most of the money they earned.
Going to places where there are fewer regulations, secure property, opportunities to do things. If you speak to somebody that's done business in Europe or had a profession in Europe who's gone to the United States, they'll tell you the culture is completely different. It's almost as if there is a culture of wanting you to succeed, wanting your neighbor to succeed or whoever to. It's a very empowering culture. And I think Europe's problem is they're really good on regulation. They are very bad at innovation.
Yeah.
And even Britain, they said, let's use Brexit as a way of breaking away from regulation. They've completely missed that opportunity. I don't know what they've done with Brexit, but I don't think that they've achieved what they had in mind in disengaging from this EU bureaucracy.
What do you think we should do? I mean, we're a country where we would, I think you and I probably agree that we would want to be a country that encourages people to do well.
We should do everything to remove obstacles to direct investment in South Africa. And that includes, let's start with exemptions to foreign companies for BEE. So as I said, instead of offering up equity or other things, say that there are equivalents or there are things that you can do for the community. Let's give you a scorecard that rewards how many people you employ or trainees, that kind of thing, because we need the capital, we need the investment to grow jobs. So start with that. And then I would say also look at government spending, look at the rules that apply and that allow municipalities to pay 500 Rand for a light bulb. Get rid of that because we're running out of money. That's why we need VAT increases and tax increases, or at least why the ANC is proposing it. That's why we have a budget deficit.
I mean, the Minister of Finance said that the bank is empty. We just don't have any more money.
Yeah. Straight after a wage deal was concluded with public servants, 3 years above inflation.
Again, we know that there's this corrupt relationship between public servants and the government because the public servants use the unions, who are also part of that alliance with the government.
You say we know, but I don't know how many ordinary South Africans actually understand.
Let's explain to people here, because this is really important.
Yeah.
The reason you have paid an automatic increase every year, which is mostly above inflation,
consistently above
sometimes
inflation,
considerably more than inflation. They've sometimes got 11, 12, 13% increases in the public sector. You're paying for those people to keep a much more lavish lifestyle than the average private sector South African will ever have. And every year, no matter what happens, they get their increase. It's because of this rotten relationship between the unions and the government, and it continues to this day. And we've been paying those increases for 30 years in a row now.
Yes. And COSATU has to own that. Somebody has to force COSATU to own that. They're very happy to agree to public sector wage increases. In fact, they trash the streets and burn down buildings and instigate violence if they don't get the increases. If you work in a municipality, your entry level salary is at least 20 to 25,000 Rand.
Sure.
That is significantly more than what the ordinary South African earns.
And at the top end, what kind of money does a mayor, like, what were they paying you in Tshwane?
A mayor of a big metro is about 1.4 million a year. A municipal manager gets considerably more because that's in the class of a CEO.
Sure.
It's so forth, about 2.83 million.
Sure. Okay, so you get really good people there, but they're expensive.
Well, you don't always get the good people. That's the problem. The pool of available people are getting older, and you don't get the necessary skills. But the point is, we have to make certain sacrifices as the South African public in order to maintain salary increases for civil servants. And at some point, we have to say, what is the cost benefit to this? If we're going to start making cuts, do we cut grants and then let the salary increases continue?
If they're not even prepared to offer no increases. What appetite is there to cut? Zero, less than zero.
The ANC no longer hold all of the cards. So we've done the sums as the DA, and well, not me, the
party has.
The party, the folks up there, and they said if you cut something like 30% off traveling, you cut advertising, you cut catering, which you shouldn't have in any event, you can make up enough to plug this budget deficit. So the sacrifices that we need to make are still fairly,
modest
sacrifices. And if they're not even willing to do that, then we're going to have a very, very difficult time trying to govern this country.
But it's like Ouroboros, the snake that eats its own tail, right?
Yes.
Because not only do the unions make sure that the government employees keep getting the increases and stay in the jobs no matter what. It's not performance related mostly. It's got nothing to do with that.
Very few civil servants across the world.
Name a minister in any administration so far that's done such a stellar job that you thought, wow, I hope they get an increase and I'm prepared to pay a little more tax to make that happen. Said no one ever. But it's also that those people who are employed by the government and who are members of the unions also vote for the ANC. So they score on three levels. Those people are sitting pretty.
And if you look at COSATU's membership, they've lost so many members.
But they don't represent the workers anymore.
No, I mean,
these are not blue-collar people.
The majority of folks left in COSATU are public sector unions.
Yeah.
SATU for the teachers,
SAMU
for the municipal workers.
is doing a very good job for them.
Yeah, it's a racket.
Yeah.
It's a racket at the expense of the South African public, but especially the poor, who are deprived of opportunities. And we've got to call them out on that.
Now I've got you talking politics again. But I mean, this is what we love to do as South Africans. So here's a story from a little bit further away, again relating to the guy who sets everybody's hair on fire, Donald Trump. He's suddenly enacted, not suddenly, he did warn that this was going to happen, 25% tariffs on goods from Canada and Mexico, along with 20% tariffs on select Chinese products. Hey, if you're ordering on Temu from America, you're going to be paying 20% more from today. They've officially commenced, sparking immediate retaliatory tariffs from Canada and China. Measures include tariffs on $155 billion worth of American goods by Canada, while China's imposed tariffs on 15% U.S. agricultural products. These actions have led to fears of escalating trade tensions. Well, Princess Justin Trudeau said today, the United States launched a trade war against Canada, their closest partner and ally, their closest friend. Canadians are reasonable, but we will not back down from a fight. Not when our country's at stake, said Justin. So I'm sure that everybody's quaking in their boots in America. Ontario Premier Doug Ford cancelled Starlink. He was like, well, I'm not going to use Starlink no more. Okay. We're in Canada, A, and B, we're not going to pay more. Anyway, it's done, it's gone, Ford said. We won't award contracts to people who enable, this is what he's saying about Starlink, who enable and, hang on a second here, enable and encourage economic attacks on our province and our country. They only have President Trump to blame. So people are very pissed off about this. A lot of people are also saying that these tariffs are a terrible idea because they're not going to actually raise money for the United States economy. That's the devil's advocate argument from the non-Trump people. And others saying, good, let them all punish each other into hell and let's see what happens. Any thoughts on any of this?
Well, firstly, that Trudeau impersonation was, scarily good. You've been practicing this.
I tap into the most feminine masculine side of it whenever I'm trying to be Justin Trudeau.
All right.
But I mean, he's been held up, especially by liberals all over the world, including, I'm sure, some people in the DA. He's been held up as this perfect example of what liberal democracy can turn out in terms of leadership, right?
And his party's probably gonna be turned out of power.
Yeah, that's right. And
turn to more muscular politics.
Right.
Even on the classical liberal side. So the tariffs are an interesting thing. They say, I don't know this, it's secondhand knowledge, but they say that some products cross the border with Mexico and the United States several times before it ends up being distributed to the consumer. So you might have a car that gets a part, it goes over the border, it gets another part, goes over the border. And so I
Wow, that
don't
could
really
be
see
taxed so many times.
Yeah, I don't see how this is going to work. Tariffs against China is one thing, but key trading partners like Canada and Mexico, and then you've got to listen to the folks that interpret Trump. Because certain people say, no, this is just a negotiating tactic.
We need Trump whisperers.
A Trump whisperer. So it's just a negotiating tactic, and hopefully there's a deal. And the Commerce Secretary said something of a deal is coming. And then there are others who say, no, tariffs are great. It's a new form of tax. You can reduce the deficit. But we'll see. We'll see. Trump has clearly changed the rules of the game.
Yeah.
And it's very entertaining, but it's also scary in a way.
I also see in the news that King Charles has hosted a historic Ramadan iftar at Windsor Castle. That guy is also just, if he isn't talking to plants, he's forgetting that he's the head of the Church of England, if that's worth anything.
Is he talking to plants?
He's always been talking to plants. He walks around his garden going, how do you do? Oh, very well, tree. It's very nice to see you. No, he's completely fucking off the reserve. Camilla, I just heard from the daffodils. They think you're looking marvelous this morning. Would you like to go out for an ice cream? No, he's mad. He's mad. Just unbelievable. Saw Prince William speaking Welsh over the weekend, and I thought he had a brain injury. Like, have you heard? Welsh is a terrible. Let me just tell you, if you're Welsh and you watch this show, you're not going to be watching the show for a long time, because I'm about to explain that I've heard a lot of terrible languages with way too many like guttural, disgusting sounds. But Welsh is impossible. I don't know how they could do that to children. They shouldn't allow that to be taught anywhere. It sounds like violence.
But it took a lot of practice. So obviously, Prince William is taking this very seriously.
What else has he got to do? Let's be honest. Cut less ribbons?
Fair point.
I mean, really, I do understand that they perform a function, just like a succulent plant performs a function.
He's called the Prince of Wales, so
yes,
you've got to earn that title.
He should probably know.
With a bit of labor.
His father learned to speak Welsh because
I remember that. Yeah.
Basically, I think the Queen and Prince Philip said, "Look, if you don't do this, then you really are useless." So he did, and Charles could speak it fluently, I believe.
Take the edge off the elitism.
Yeah, so they've got to do things like learn the speech, but Jesus, I mean, his throat must have been red raw by the end of it. Okay, let's talk about what you get to do. You're not mayor of Pretoria anymore. You might be again, for all we know. When is the next election, by the way?
It's either 2026, so next year, or early 2027.
Okay.
So it's a matter of months. We're probably going to get into campaigning pretty soon.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, I mean, you want to be mayor again?
Yes. And
are the DA going to suddenly put someone else in place of you? They're not going to do that.
It's a competitive process, so nobody's entitled to it just because you've had it before. I'll have to put my name in, go to interviews, and see. Maybe there's some amazing person who wants the job and can get it, and that's the party. That's the rules of the party.
Sure. And they might want to do some window dressing.
But you asked. I mean, you asked a question earlier, which I haven't really.
You slid past that nicely. I just threw in that they might like some window dressing. The DA's been. No, they've been like that before. They've done that before.
The DA has
there's
made.
A woman.
The DA has made.
There's a black man. Let's put them in because they'll look good in the role.
I mean, there's a woman. Helen Zille was bloody brilliant in government.
Yeah,
and some would say she's still bloody brilliant. But the DA did make mistakes in the past. We don't float above ordinary human beings. We're ordinary people. We make mistakes. The important thing is, can you learn from them? Can you correct, adjust, and move forward? And one of the things I think we've learned is that when it comes to mayors, you really have to have the best possible people for the job. I didn't just fall out of the sky or out of parliament into a mayoral seat. I was there before with Salim Simanga. I was on his mayoral committee for corporate and shared services. It was a very intense period of my life. I was very young. I learned quite a bit. And that's the kind of skills and experience I think that the DA would want.
I like Sully. You still speak to him?
Absolutely. He's our provincial leader.
Okay.
He also lives in Pretoria. So, yeah,
I like him. He's a hardworking guy.
Absolutely.
So tell me, when you're mayor, what are the good things, the fun things? And now, because you're not in office, people aren't going to go, oh, this guy is obsessed with the blue light brigades or
Mm.
whatever else it might be. Like, what's the cool stuff about being the mayor, and what's the really shitty stuff?
The best part by far is getting to work with a talented group of people.
No,
You
man,
come
I don't
into-
want to hear
no,
that.
no, no, no,
I
no.
want to hear that
Listen
you've
to
got
this.
that you've got
No.
you know where the secret tunnels
No,
are.
no,
or
no.
the, come on, tell us something fun.
No, it's. You want me to answer the question? This is the answer, and it's not a bullshit answer.
Okay, go.
Getting into the office in the morning,
Yeah.
and you have a group of people who say to you, "Okay, it's a shitstorm. We've got this power outage. We've got that water outage. We've got this person attacking you that we need to respond
This
to."
is fun.
It is absolutely. It's
What are
exhilarating.
you? What are you? A fucking idiot?
It's exhilarating. And this goes
That's
to
fun for you.
You
You're a
asked.
masochist.
You asked why do people go into politics? Because at its best, it draws all of your talents. It takes everything that you've got, and that makes you feel alive. Now, if that
Wow.
makes me sound like
Like
some
a
kind of lunatic, well, so be it.
Worse than the King Charles talking to the plants.
Obsessive people do
All right.
tend to end up
I
in these
meant some
positions.
cool thing that you like. You get to have access to some place that the rest of us in Pretoria don't.
Almost,
you get to-
almost
you get to
anything.
visit-
Almost anything I say now, you're just going to roll your eyes.
No, I'm
But
not.
let
But-
me say-
but
let
I
me
don't want to
say,
hear about how your
when
great
you-
team and sorting
when-
out a power outage. That's
well,
not fun.
When you get some old lady who approaches you in the street or at the restaurant and tells you, "We are so proud of you. Thank you for what you're doing to
Okay.
us." That is unusual because 90% of what a councillor gets is
Abuse.
abuse. The lights are off. What the hell is the DA
Wow.
doing for us?
I-
So if you get people who say, "I really admire you, thank you,"
Okay.
and it's usually older women because there's a softer side, there's an appreciation
Okay.
for what you're doing. That's amazing.
I had forgotten that the barrier to entry for like love in that position is very, very low.
Absolutely.
Okay, so let me
So
take that
you have
back.
to be a masochist.
No, okay, but really,
The-
to me, that's just a horrific
worst-
way to live.
The worst of all is if you have to face people who have had tragedy. When folks died in Hammanskraal because
Yeah,
of
the
of a
poisoning, the cholera, yeah.
Outbreak, and you're speaking on behalf of a government that has failed over many years. So I've only been here for a couple of months. In fact, I was there for 2 months. Then the cholera broke out. But you are speaking as the successor in title to folks who have ruined the reputation of politicians and who've made many mistakes. And you yourself are prone to making mistakes. That is really, really difficult. And trying to transcend that barrier is incredible. But that it's also a character building exercise, I think.
But there's nothing fun in that description. So, okay, have you ever
So-
had an old lady like rush at you with a stick and say, "My lights are out.
It is
They've been out for weeks."
It is exhilarating to stand up to unions that are trashing your city and telling them, "We will not relent. We will stand through this. We will build networks. We will outplay you in the media. We will outlast you, and we'll save the city 600 million rand." That is exhilarating. It is exhilarating to finally come up with a solution to the problem of Hammanskraal water. And yes, the project hasn't been delivered fully, but it ended decades of failure. So
Wow.
So I roll your eyes, but
I'm not rolling
there
my
are
eyes.
big challenges in government that take sacrifices from people who have modest talent, and that is what makes it fun. And sometimes you succeed, and all of the crap that you have to deal with makes it worthwhile.
Okay, we're just very different people. The next time anyone comes up to me,
I'm sure. I mean, you've had to start a business. You've taken risks. You've gone through difficult times.
sure,
Overcoming that sort of stuff and building something that is a sense of
it's
achievement.
tremendously gratifying, and the tough times are the ones that build the character, obviously. And it's nice to have success along the way too. Obviously, all of that matters enormously, but
You just
but I
don't
just-
have coalition partners that wrench the mayoral chain from your
that
neck.
must make it much worse, because what you're saying doesn't appeal to me at all. When if anyone ever comes up to me and says, "You should really run, you should be in politics," I'll consider it an insult based on what you've just told me is the best part of your job and the worst part of your job. It sounds horrific. Do your family support you in all of this? Is your wife like excited for you, or is she like, I know I know he really wants to do this. I'll just grin and bear it.
Yeah, I don't think you can really succeed if your spouse doesn't support you. If it was 50 years ago, there was one person making the decisions in the household. Things are different now.
Yeah.
So taking up a job in government does have implications for your household. You're not going to be there. Your family, they're going to get death threats. There are people intruding in your space. I mean, I live in a townhouse, so there's no sprawling mansion. So if people have to come into my house,
man. So you
got to move furniture
You
around.
take out the rubbish, and like one of the other people in the townhouse complex are going to say to you, when you were mayor, this didn't work so well, and now it's working better. Do you have to put up with that?
Of course. I mean, you feel the judgment of your neighbors looking at you, tut. This is now how many weeks since the garbage has not been. Can't you just bloody well strike a deal? What help does it have having the mayor as your neighbor if you can't organize? So you have to have support from your spouse.
There's no benefit to being the mayor.
There's
reason.
There's lots of benefit. There's lots of benefit. And we do it as a public service. But yeah, my wife does support me and she does encourage me.
What does she do?
She is a financial advisor. We met at university.
Right.
And so she knew.
How many kids?
2 kids.
2 kids. How old are they?
7 and 6.
Jeez, that's tough, hey?
Yeah.
So, wow.
So my wife knew me before I went into politics, and she knew what she was signing up to.
Okay. And I suppose, the kids knew what you were doing, even if it was just.
Yeah. So my son, in Afrikaans, mayor is burgemeester.
Yeah.
So my son is like, okay, what are you going to make burgers?
That's great.
I mean, that's a real thing. He used to refer to me as the Braai president. So
right.
So they have a sense. And when I was voted out, I don't know if you ever saw the scene, but
it was a
chaotic,
total mess in the city.
To me, it was just water off a duck's back. I've had much worse.
No.
But while I was sitting there,
paying for blood.
While I was sitting there, there's this EFF councillor, and she just went berserk. She shouted at me,
I saw that.
And my daughter, who's a really, really tough little person, she said to me, "Why was that lady so upset with you? What did you do to her?" And you sort of have to explain, this is politics. This is this is what you're in for. So I think they're very young, so they don't pick up the insults and the stuff. When they're older, you have to sort of prepare them for that and insulate them from the public gaze.
Again, more reasons not to ever go into public service.
Have some sympathy for the good politicians like me.
It's horrible. My God, after this, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to take you for a drink, and I'll just cry hearing your stories. It sounds horrific.
That sounds, we can have a drink. I mean, it's like 8 o'clock in the morning, but let's not cry.
No, I'll cry. It just sounds terrible. Fourways is more pothole than road lately. Have you seen the Home Affairs Department on the corner of Nanasita and Bosman? I'll be trying to go there again for amendments. Rough, says Rebellious Ruth. Yeah, I must be honest with you. I haven't been into the CBD of Pretoria for such a long time. Does the mayor still have his mayor bling, and does he wear it to the club? Says Congo Chris. No,
I actually never wore the chain.
Do we have a Pretoria chain?
There is a Pretoria chain. We were looking
for
the
it. Chain?
No, we're looking for it. We were looking for it, and somebody thought it might be gone.
Oh, shit.
But it's in the Pretoria Arts Museum.
Oh, okay.
So that's a fairly nice place. It's not as chaotic as Joburg's art museum, but yeah, it's there.
All right. I didn't know that we actually had a chain.
Yes. No,
what is the state of museums and public parks and things? I mean, do you, as an ordinary citizen now and leader of the opposition in that municipality, are there places that you can go with your kids that you would feel safe to go with them? Again, when I was a kid in Pretoria, there were art museums. I used to go and look at them. There was the museum opposite the City Hall in Pretoria, which used to have some fantastic stuff in it. As a kid, I was fascinated by that. I think it's a whale sculpture outside.
Yeah, that's the Museum of Natural History.
That's lovely.
Yeah.
That's still going?
That's going.
Who pays for that?
That's not a municipal.
Is that Department of Arts and Culture?
That's the national department, yeah.
That's,
you can still go there.
Gayton's got to be looking after that.
I think so, yes. Yeah. So we've got lovely resorts in Pretoria. that are still very, very nice. Ritvlei, Groenkloof, Ferry Glen, if you like hiking. There is the Art Museum, which has got some Irma Stearns and all of the South African classics. And those are really nice stuff. But you do see the decay. A place like Centurion has, in the past 2 months, just turned into a jungle. And the city ran out of hot asphalt to fix potholes. And, the EFF MMC told AfriForum to sod off, so there's no one helping with the grass cutting.
Really? Have they told AfriForum to get out?
Yeah, I mean, we had an agreement, and it's not exclusively with AfriForum. We said, civil society, come and help us, because we don't have all the means. If you want to fix potholes, just tell somebody and don't block the road, and we'll be happy, and we'll say thank you. And the EFF said, no, they must sod off. So I'm not sure if that agreement has in fact been cancelled. But we've got problems, and my biggest fear is that the model that they're following now in Pretoria and Tshwane is the Joburg model.
Yeah, you said so. That scares the hell out of me.
Yeah.
What's your favorite place in Pretoria?
Very interesting question. Probably the campus of the university.
The university? With those ugly buildings?
No, they're beautiful.
Some of those modern buildings are revolting.
No, the modern. I mean, I'm not talking about like the agriculture. I mean, that's ugly.
But
like
even the humanities buildings
the
are
old
revolting.
arts building.
Yeah, that's nice.
Across from the engineering building and even the modern law building is nice. So there's some good memories there. I went to university before wokeism and the takeover of critical theory.
Okay.
So I've got fairly good memories. The botanical gardens are beautiful.
That's nice. Yeah,
any place in Pretoria in October is beautiful.
Yeah, so, especially with the jacarandas.
We have a lovely city.
So Matthew wants to know, when you become mayor of Pretoria, are you given a course in like braaiing? Because
no,
or did you grow up with that?
You don't get elected if you can't braai. I mean, come on, it's a prerequisite. It's not something you get trained in.
Okay. Make a national day of Casbah Roadhouse restaurant in Pretoria, says Christian. Okay. Khomotso says, I hope you told your kids to stay out of politics.
I think they'll get that message. They'll try and avoid it.
All right. There we go. The Telkom Tower needs to be open to the public, says Ruth. For a good fee. Imagine the view all around. That's why why did they never open a restaurant up there?
Interesting. I have no idea. Should ask Telkom.
Yeah, I wonder if with all the signals going in and out from there, whether it's fry your brain, who knows? I mean, there are probably a couple of people in Pretoria I'd like to send up there if it does fry.
It'd be a nice thing to have. I don't think.
Yeah, sure.
I think Cape Town has that. We're always looking for stuff to distinguish ourselves and make us better than Cape Town.
What do you have to say for the drainage system? This is great. Mapelo wants to know about the drainage system problem. It's no longer suitable for the changing landscape of cities. I think he's talking generally. You must have had some interesting conversations with people from other cities all over the world about what their biggest challenges are. I mean, there is no doubt that the stuff that you spoke about in the first hour about how we've got increasing urbanization, more and more people into less and less space. Things like drainage are actually something that you have to be interested in if you're mayor, because there are serious considerations. Approval of buildings, electricity, sewage. I mean, that's something really unsexy that you have to deal with. In the central business district of a city, you have to worry about where all the shit goes.
Absolutely. You have to worry about cattle carcasses being, pushed down drain pipes.
Yeah.
Unusual life. It's a meeting point between rural and urban.
Lovely stuff like that.
And you've got to sort that out. So what's common is infrastructure problems are common everywhere. You talk to the mayor of London. I haven't spoken to the mayor of London, but similar situations. Infrastructure is old, and how do you pay for it?
Yeah.
And the essential answer is you got to let the private sector in. Just like you have to let the private sector in on rails and ports, you have to get private sector money to replace old infrastructure. What's not so common in terms of problems is the basic stuff that we struggle with as South Africans. Like basic things, just like, getting a tender advertised and sorting out corruption in your supply chain management, getting payments sorted out.
Yeah.
And we see that, oh no, it's a problem of competence. It's not. It's just that the criminal elements who unfortunately have taken over so many parts of government are very, very sophisticated and they're very good
That's quite a
at hiding there.
That's quite a big deal, what you said now, that competence is not the problem.
Yeah.
The problem is the criminality and the way these people are
There are
entrenched.
people who benefit from the system not working.
That's interesting.
And then they say capacity.
Yeah.
But it's not capacity.
It's not. It's and actually we've got good people. Okay, well that's a relief. Let's hope they get to do what they're good at. So Congo Chris replying, or Carl, sorry. Carl replying to Mapelo. Mapelo, I can't believe you don't know this, but drainage is fucked because the DA is racist. That's Mapelo earlier who asked if the DA was racist. And then Congo Chris does say, Mapelo, the problem can be solved with just maintaining what is already in place. Nobody goes into the runoffs to clean them out like they used to be. And that stuff's meant to be done, right?
Yeah, that's true. But your big problem with drainage systems, especially in places like Shoshanguve and Mabopane, where you've got massive drainage problems, is the infrastructure is so old. And because the city has run out of money, you don't have the capital and you don't have the credit worthiness to upgrade that infrastructure. So it's a bit of a technical point, but it's not as easy as just maintain. Maintain is important, but replacing stuff, actually, replenishing it. And there's a bit of a snooze fest here, but if you look at Cape Town's capital budget, the budget that you have to build stuff, it's 9 billion.
Sure.
9 billion. Tshwane is at 2 billion. And the difference between those two cities is not so much population profile, it's good governance over a period of 20 years compounded.
Right.
And that's the place you want to get at. You want to have as much capital, and you want to, if you spend that money, get good value so that you get nice roads and sewage infrastructure and sound things that work.
Okay, well, I hope you haven't had a horrible time here. But
it's been lovely.
Compared to being mayor, everything sounds like fun. It's really nice to have you come here and just talk to us. Just talk. There were no prepared points of view. I didn't give you an agenda. I didn't have a list of questions I was going to catch you out on or any of that stuff. And I think it's been a lot of fun. It's also nice to spend a bit of time thinking about the city that I really love living in. And even though it's a disaster in so many ways, I hope
you get to humanize the politician.
No, I hope it
so much sympathy for
someone's
us.
going to say that. Someone's going to say that the whole reason I brought you here was to help the DA get votes, which is obviously not true either. Do mayors pay their TV license? Listen, I've got into unbelievable trouble with my audience and with everybody. Everybody in the office is making fun of me because I paid my TV license. I had to buy a TV for my domestic worker. So I don't know what to say. You will escape more lightly than I will.
If you buy a TV, you've got to show a license. That's the thing. So that sort of forces you into it. I paid for a TV license, but I'm behind on my license. And
interest is bad, right?
What's shocking me is the interest. I mean, how do you get to charge so much interest? Like this month it's 300, next month it's 400. So yeah, I'm behind on my TV license. But
Congo Chris, Gareth Cliff is the SABC TV license shill. This is what they're calling me now. Can't trust Gareth anymore. He pays his TV license. It's so bad, says Bitcoin Boot. People who pay a TV license are the problem, says Slippery Pickle. Not if you buy your TV in Marabastad, says Morabbit.
that was my mistake. Thank you for that.
All right, thank you, everybody. That's all we got time for today. Go and fuck yourselves. And we will see you on Friday at 6 in the morning, bright and early. Big thank you to Cilliers Brink, who's come in from Tshwane this morning, the former mayor, to spend some time with us. And by the way, let us know if you've got any guests that you'd really want to see, people you'd want to see in that seat, people you want to hear us chat to, you want to ask questions of. It's your show as much as it's mine, etc., etc. Like, subscribe, blah, blah, blah. And we'll see you on Friday. Ciao. Oh my God, is this a new Jan Bichel?
Mijn oma heeft de stoom, maar wil niet weten wat dat stinkt. Ze hoeft ook nooit te pissen, hoeveel ze dan ook drinkt. Dan zie ik haar weer lachen, wat hebben we een lol. Dan met de hele meute, de zakje zit weer vol. Oei, mijn zakje zit weer vol. Mijn Oma, daar roepen we